Tetap selalu berpijak dan melangkah.
Kahit maging sino ako. Tak kira bila. Akan selalu ko ingat. At tatandaan ko ang pinanggalingan ko.
Budaya bangsa kita.
Our value. Kepercayaan kita. Our hope. Gagawin ko ang lahat para ipagtanggol. Apapun untuk membuat negara ko bangga. Galing sa pinanggalingan ko ang lakas ko.
Motivasiku.
Dan selamat datang.
It is time for us to talk about the MSC, the origin, and what it has become. Let's roll back to the very beginning. The Mobile Legends Bang Bang Southeast Asia Cup, or MSC, was established in 2017, regarded as one of the first official MLBB major tournaments hosted by Moonton. The first MSC was held in Jakarta, Indonesia, featuring a total of 8 teams. IDNS of Thailand took home the first ever MSC trophy. The MSC 2018 was refreshed with a brand new format and the participation of 2 more countries, Myanmar and Vietnam. Now featuring 10 teams, the crown was once again snatched away from the home country, Indonesia. The Main ended up sweeping the countrymen Digital Devils Pro 3-0. In the following year, MSC 2019 has shifted its host country to the Philippines. There are a total of 12 teams from 9 countries in Southeast Asia. And it was Onyx Esports that defeated fellow Indonesian representatives Lure Esports to claim the championship. Nonetheless, MSC continued on in the following year. Though it was fully online, the tournament achieved a record-high concurrent viewer count for MSC. MSC 2021 saw another all-Filipino grand final between Blacklist International and Execration. And it was Execration that ascended to be the new king of the sea. With MSC 2022 returning to a live tournament setting in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, there are a lot of wonderful stories waiting to be written. For instance, can Smart Omega, who inherited the MSC 2021 champion roster, defend their title this year? While Onyx Esports and IDNS could increase their MSC trophy tally to 2. Will the home country curse continue in MSC 2022? Can the Philippines representatives claim the MSC title for the 3rd time? Or will there be a new victor? The next king of the sea. Let the new legends unfold. See you in MSC 2022 for the supremacy.
But if we're expecting Omega to go play crazy, right, I would expect the results of this match at best for IDNS for a good start at MSC is a 1-1. If it's a 2-0, I think that's going to shake the world.
Absolutely, and people are always hungry for that. I get the feeling that after witnessing what happened on day one, viewers are going to be hungry to see what these lesser-known teams have to bring to the table. But we're going to be getting to see that very, very soon because the drafting phase for the first game of the day has now officially begun. Smart Omega going to be drafting on the blue side, IDNS having second pick.
I feel like after yesterday, we can't count anybody out, right? I mean, that initial thought process for Falcon Esports is something to say a lot. And now with IDNS, yes, there's not that much, I mean, that we've seen from them, so to speak, but we know that they can play out of their minds when it comes time to it, especially Angelina. I've seen the performance, especially with Xavier. Now, Xavier was kind of a hot topic as well as Julian. So far, I don't see any of those bans coming out. Omega is going to go ahead and take out Franco, the Natalia, Akai, which we saw a lot of yesterday in the jungle, right? IDNS responds with the 1-1 ban, the Eve, the Valentina.
I think there's a lot of priority picks here. With this new meta coming about, and I was having a conversation with a lot of the other Malaysian broadcasters, we were all talking about there are just way too many priority picks, some situational, but some who give free wins, and 1-1, one of them. Second of all, Julian, where does he really stand? Is he 1-1 level, a Kai level of pick and ban? He's good, but it's about the pairing.
Yeah, it's very important to think about how the teams want to play around this Julian. So far, we haven't seen more teams play around his enhanced chain as compared to the enhanced scythe. So they're focusing more on using him as an engage tool for his massive crowd control rather than bursting people down too quickly. On the opposite side, though, we can see IDNS instantly picking up two more very meta picks so far at the MSC, the Beatrix, as well as the Xavier.
Yeah, those are solid choices here. Going back to Smart Omega real quick, one thing I'm wondering, because we saw some the successfulness of Julian in the jungle mostly, I believe even Demon Kite brought him out. So this is something that we're not used to seeing from the teams in general because, right, he's just available now. So what I am curious if Ryzen actually also decides to take Julian in the jungle here, but there's a Fanny that comes out. So a Fanny and a Masha.
Some really good strong picks coming out from Omega's side, and especially if you have a player who's highly mechanical and can actually pick up that Fanny, it's something that they have to keep in mind. IDNS are going to be locking in the Thamas for themselves. They need some sustain, but the question is, how do they stop Fanny from getting across the map and getting on top of Beatrix? I'm expecting Omega looking for Kufra bans here.
Kufra ban would definitely be a good shout out, but I feel like we've also seen in the past where Kufra, despite being a very obvious counter to these high mobility heroes, does still require a little bit of execution. In the hands of a player that has really high mechanical ability, Fanny can actually still outplay Kufra quite easily. So if anything, IDNS needs a hero that has more confident, more simple and comfortable lockdown. Unfortunately, options like the Franco and Akai have already been taken off the table.
Yeah, that doesn't leave them a lot of options, right? But, I mean, they've got solid choices. These are kind of like, if you want to say, the meta that we're used to seeing with the heroes, right? And again, this is kind of blowing my mind here for Smart Omega because this is not typical for them, and this is, again, why they are considered that last and that kind of poison, because you don't really know what's going along the head, the mind, the mastermind of Coach Puckvet, and also the players. I mean, they've obviously been practicing different things, so yes, as we mentioned, how does that Julian pair with this? You know, how do you get those combos off that we saw yesterday? So right now, this is not the typical Smart Omega we're seeing. They're still going to have two more picks to round this out. But right now, those last bans from IDNS is going to be that Brody, so they're taking out the gold laners.
Interesting. There's still Popo and Koopa up for grabs for Omega, but let's not forget that second pick in the second phase will get that first initial lock-in. So I think there's a couple of ideas that we can go with here. We could expect Beatrix to be moved over into the mid lane if there is a terrible gold lane matchup. That's what I'm suspecting from IDNS, but Omega here. I think at this stage of the game, they're looking over at IDNS and saying, hey, you've got a Xavier, that's fine. Beatrix, that's fine. Nothing really stops our composition as of right now. let's get rid of this Atlas. Maybe we can force you into a Gufra.
So they're definitely targeting very heavily on all of these roam options, not just getting rid of the tanky picks, but even banning out the Natalia beforehand because they want to be able to retain control over the map. We don't have a lot of information on IDNS, but what we do know is that this team is known for playing quite aggressively in the early game. They want to be able to close out games more quickly as compared to their opponents, which is actually quite counterintuitive to what Smart Omega is known for. They have the ability to really come back from tight situations. So this is going to be quite interesting to watch. And IDNS right now really need a solid source of CC.
Well, there's some nice CC right there. They get the Ruby, right? So also, I want to point out the fact that everything that I watched on IDNS with Angelina playing this Xavier, most likely the Xavier is going to Angelina, it was a fantastic performance, a game, and just literally half the time Angelina was carrying on the Xavier. Now, yesterday, I believe the win rate for Xavier is 0%. I think it was picked 3 times and not able to get a win yet. So this might be the time, this might be the team, the player to actually get Xavier on the board here, because right now they've got a lot of CC now, they've got a lot of damage potential, they have the sustain with that famous pick too, but Smart Omega going to answer here with a Grok and a carry.
Okay, a good way to peel, a good way to actually isolate enemies, to go for big catches. I'm looking at Smart Omega's composition so far. They've got strong engage, good pick-off potential here, and most importantly, they've got a very clear curve. They have an early game that's relatively strong, and if it goes well, mid-game is going to be a free pass. But let's say it gets into the later stages of the game. What do they have? They still have the carry.
You know, absolutely. I do like the curve on Smart Omega right now. It does feel like a very traditional lineup. And I do have to wonder about their early game power meter from both these teams. We already highlighted earlier, IDNS likes to play a bit more for that early game, but here, they actually have slightly more scaling heroes than you might expect.
For me, early, if we're going to talk about early game power meter, especially since they lock in this Hilda, right now, that's an option they can use here, but I want to say Smart Omega has that early game potential, especially level 4, right? You got the wild charge. That's a huge stun. It's very long. And then you have Fanny, right? Anytime a Fanny is on the opposite side, if they're able to get those cables off the damage and everything else, have a good time in the jungle, it's kind of hard to match some of that damage potential. But let's say we've seen it before too. They whiff the cables, they're not able to connect, then that kind of falls off.
I mean, if we're talking about the early game, right, and especially if we are talking about the cables starting to fall off, then you have to just double down on the early to mid game, hoping that Fanny will be able to be that driving force. But when you're looking at the supports right now, this is Hilda up against Masha, right? Instantly, I'm thinking they're going for the invades. They're looking to slow down this jungle.
Well, I guess we'll find out if that is truly going to be the case, because we now enter the land of Dawn for the first time on day 2 of MSC 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, Smart Omega are going to be playing on the blue side, and on the opposite end, we got IDNS. Will they be able to show us another upset here on the MSC stage?
Interesting. This is a Ruby jungle, right?
Oh.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't see this often.
Yeah, I don't see this often too. I would have expected Ruby probably to kind of take her time here, probably play a support position, but instantly invades start walking through, and Lloyd has to survive.
Oh, but he is actually able to take the orange buff. Not sure if it's going to be worth it though. First blood gonna go over to Ryzen on the side of Smart Omega.
There you go. That's already starting that early game power spike I was talking about. I mean, in terms of that, you don't want to obviously give that to the Fanny, and now, you know, this could set them up for dominating the early game.
Okay. So let's talk about the early game one more time, except this time, let's keep in mind that Cheku is going to be playing this Grok in the support position, not the Masha this time, right? So now, we're expecting a more defensive playstyle, so I think IDNS made a really smart decision by taking this orange buff, because they can start playing even more defensively and trying to protect Angelina here. Is it going to be enough? No, they find the kill.
Now that's going to be another one going the side of Smart Omega, and in the meantime, we can already see that Ryzen giving them a bit of their own medicine, now going for Loise's orange buff instead. Not going to let the earlier game steal get to them.
I'll tell you guys this, right? When Chaknu, the Chak Mamba, is playing Grok, he is not, maybe like, let's say 1 out of 10 times, he plays very defensively, but the guy will make plays out like that you're not even expecting. He'll use, you know, every tool in the kit that he has, plus the flicker to make plays, either save teammates. They've seen it time after time. So right now, paired with what they have, it could be bad.
Ooh, that's a wild charge. Gonna be able to find out Zanri. He's trying to get away. Looks like he will be able to escape thanks to Lois. Zanzan's now coming in to provide some backup, but Lois dropping real low. Ryzen still on top of the turtle. Renzio dropping low, but it's the Ruby that's gonna be taken out right away. Chaknu managing to escape from their clutches as well as Ryzen secures the turtle.
I personally think that's a little bit of a misplay coming in from Lois. He could have easily walked towards the gate side to protect himself. And since Angelino was trying his best and he was blocked off, all he had to do was drop his abilities, pray that Lois was able to communicate properly, and move towards that gate to keep Omega in check. Unfortunately, the kill still goes over to Omega, and now this entire early game as we transition into mid is looking in Omega's favor.
This is again the question mark that I have here, right? The Ruby in the jungle. It's something, like I said, we haven't seen much of, and I don't know how well it's going to work. I mean, yes, you have throughout the entire game, you have the CC potential, but you also lose the flicker, right? Like this is what you pick Ruby for usually. Flicker, I'm offended combos. It's just pretty much the same thing as having like the flicker on the Grok, right? So you lose that. I feel like that's losing a lot of what this hero has.
I do agree with you there, but personally, I have a little bit of bias here because I actually do quite enjoy playing Ruby in the jungle myself. It is a hero that's surprisingly deceptive to be utilized in that form here, but you can definitely see that when going up against a hero like the Fanny, Ryzen right now has way more mobility, way more control of the map in comparison.
See this play here down on bot side. Zanri is getting on top of Keller real quick, but E2 Max ready to get his knocked on through. Instantly, Zanri is taken out. The cartwheel held to the last second to ensure his death.
That was so clean. I mean, Max just literally walked over there, threw that knockup down, and it was a clean kill just like that for Smart Omega. So they're already 3K gold lead here. IDNS has to be thinking of a way to just slow this down, like you guys mentioned, right? Because yes, Sudafa, they have a ton of mobility on that Fanny, but the rest of the team, too, is also just rotating very well right now.
Yeah, in comparison, IDNS definitely having a little bit of difficulty maintaining control over their side of the map. E2 Max definitely made a big difference in that fight. And also, I do think this is probably the first time we have seen Julian in the mid lane in MSC so far.
No, that's true. Julian in the mid lane, especially when you're up against Xavier. Xavier doesn't naturally have a lot of pushing power until he gets his first 2 items, but now the engagement begins.
Yep, that's a wild charge onto Lois to ensure the retribution, and Ryzen follows it up in hand chain to keep Zanri knocked off a free kill. Again, going over to Omega, now 6-0.
You see what I mean? Chaknu will just make those plays time after time. And so IDNS needs a way to counter that from happening and not putting yourself in that position to get wild charge, because that stun is too long, and now they're going to make a play at the bottom.
IZ in a lot of trouble. The flicker forward into Wesker. You cannot count out the Beatrix. E2 Max has to back it off.
Yeah, he kind of felt that. He's like, never mind. He's like, call it off. We'll come back later.
Yeah, you don't really see too many players actually go for a play like that, especially expecting such an important battle spell that can be used defensively for a Beatrix who doesn't have that much mobility. So flickering in front of his face, that again, what an ego challenge.
It is interesting, especially considering when we look at other players as well. Wesker is becoming more and more popular on the Beatrix, and flickering forward to get that big burst damage isn't actually unusual nowadays. But Lois could be out of position, gets caught with the wall charge into the wall, sets up for Kelra. Zanri now coming from the back line. They will be able to find Chaknu, but they find another. IZ gonna go down. Zanri in a bit of trouble, but no CC. He will be able to run away.
Yo, Chaknu, this man's game sense is so good. He's keeping an eye on that Beatrix. As soon as Wesker is whipped out, he immediately takes the shots for Kelra, allowing him to just blow through the rest of the team.
Hey man, that's the Chak Mamba for you, right? Like I said, he is a very aggressive just player in general, so that's why when he picks these heroes, you know, the Kufras, the Groks, like this is when he gets to shine the most. And now, big damn.
That's rough, but the nighttime offended. 2-man dawning light. Not enough damage though. Angelina now out of mana. IZ getting some good snipes, but E2 Max, he knows what's coming. Juking him out. Going to be able to escape in the top lane as well. There was an attempt onto Sun, but he was able to escape from the Grok and the carry.
Good movement coming in from E2 Max for now, but topside, I think, you know, Thanos isn't having much of a fun time now that they've rotated after breaking tier 1 and even threatening Turtle.
Ryzen gets hooked, but still able to secure the turtle with Retribution. Izzy now out of position. Mega kill going over to Ryzen. Loy's now getting caught out by E2 Max with the two-man in hand. Jade, Dawning Light, not going to matter at all as Loy's is now the target carry, even managing to pick off the tower in the mid lane. Killing spree going over to E2 Max.
This is tough. We're talking about 1,000 gold per minute here, boys. I mean, it's 7 minutes in, 7K gold lead for Smart Omega here, and just look at everybody. I mean, they're all, they gotta have, what, 2-3 items all by now, and it's just a play after play. This is literally the best we've seen Julian play in the mid lane. He's just finding the CC, the knockups where he needs to, and then it's all good.
Yeah, well, currently they're at 1.5 items once they hit the 28K mark. I think they'll have about 2 items at that stage, but it's tough because right now the only member who's doing decently well is going to be the Stavos on bot side, and Omega switching things up one more time. Instead of trying to push up on that top side, they want to play for this next Lord objective and are willing to give up that tier 1 on top side because they don't want to deal with Sun. They want to keep on pressing their advantage in this 4v4.
Yeah, I am really loving the rotations from Smart Omega now, and we can see Ryzen instantly going in. He has his eyes on the Xavier and will be able to claim his prize. Now going in the massive damage, secures the enemy gold laner. Ryzen even taking the tower aggro for a short while Charge unfortunately going to miss on Zanri, but that is 2 kills for nothing.
We have to take a look at the items here because there is no way. I mean, just look at the damage being pumped out here. I mean, even Kelra, right? You saw just the health bar was deleted here on the side of IDNS, so we're talking about 10K gold lead at this point, right? The next big objective is going to be that first Lord, and honestly, IDNS is going to have a hard time even if they want to try to contest that.
Yeah, I mean, a 10K gold lead in most situations is checkmate, and this early in the game, 9 minutes as the Lord is spawning. Omega are in prime position for the checkmate. 2 as tier 2 now getting threatened.
Jackman trying to go for the wild charge, but gets stopped by the I'm Offended. E2 Max onto Sun in the side. The Dawning Light literally doing no damage at this point as Jackman finds the wild charge onto the hill. That's Henry gonna go down to Keldra. Unstoppable streak. Renzo taking most of the heat as Sun wants to find something, but IDNS are just too far behind.
So that's the thing, like, there's actually some damage potential here. Now we can actually take a look at the items, Gideon.
Yep, 3 items already on Kelra, and he's been going for the full crit build this time. Windtalker into Scarlet Phantom, into Berserker's Fury. He has more than enough damage, and as long as his team outscales him with just buying raw armor, honestly, at this stage of the game, I don't think Angelina will be able to catch up in time for a Luminous Lord push.
Something else I kind of want to highlight too is the fact that E2 Max is actually playing a completely different Julian build from all we've seen so far. He went the Calamity Reaper, Concentrated Energy, and then the Brute Force Breastplate. This is more of a brawler type Julian build.
I think this is what makes him so valuable, right? You know, the flexibility, not only in the lanes, but also the way that you can build Julian as a hero himself. This is what makes it so strong because, I mean, we've seen it now time after time, right? So far in these last 2 days where you can throw him in the jungle, build him the way you want to as an assassin or as a bruiser now, right, in the mid lane. And also with taking Mystery Shop where you can get those items a little bit faster, paired with the type of pace you set here for this game and the gold lead, man, you're going to do so much for your team here.
I mean, let's not forget that if Jackman is looking for the engager, somebody's got to peel, and E2 Max, he can do both.
Oh, that's a lot of damage from the enhanced Scythe. Lois and Isaac being poked out quite heavily, but Nihira's Passion should be able to clear up the Lord. Omega, though, not sure if they're happy with that. Do they want to look for more?
Well, right now, they're going to continue the siege on the base here of IDNS. Can actually still defend this one. They should be able to clear it. They have, I mean, they have great clearing potential. Like, they can buy time, but how much time do you need to buy here?
Well, I think we're looking at IDNS is ideally wanting to get Angelina to about 3 items. I think he just recently purchased his 2nd. He needs to get his 3rd. He's fixed his mana issue. He will be able to spam Billy. He has more than enough cooldowns. And a high ground defense of 5 minutes is going to... It's going to be a little difficult with the 14K gold lead that Omega has. They're eventually going to be able to muscle their way in. And knowing how Chiaknu plays, if he can get 3 knocked up with that wild charge, I think that'll be game over.
I feel like at this point of the game, though, you don't even need the 3-man knockup anymore. Omega being 14k gold ahead of IDNS just means that as long as they're not directly feeding themselves to the enemy, they should have a pretty clear path to victory. Honestly, I think if they wanted to brute force their way into the base, they don't even need to wait for the Lord.
Nah, I beg to defer. This is Omega. They aren't playing like RSGP. They're not boring. They want to be interesting, and I know Chuck New for a fact is going to be looking for a cool play.
He wants the what we like to call the TikTok highlights.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what he
That's
wants.
fair.
So yeah, I can see. I've seen it happen before, right? He is. If there's any moment, even if it's just one person, but it's better if it's three, right? He will find that moment, and this is exactly what IDNS needs to do, right? Pair up a little bit because you can't actually go anywhere alone because of you're so far behind here. But as the game goes on, you might be able to catch up on some of the itemization where you can start to see some form of maybe split pushing going on. But right now, they're pretty much stuck together here or in their base.
The Luminous Lord has now officially spawned once again, and Smart Omega will indeed be going for it. We can see that Chaknu and Renzio are being left to defend the lanes, make sure they are pushed out so that IDNS remains in their base. Lord gonna go over to Omega. An interesting purchase as well, Bloodlust Axe on Kelra.
Yeah, Kelra just needs to live. I think he's one of the more important members here because at this stage of the game, we're seeing that Ryzen, yes, he's almost about max items. He has more than enough damage, but even if he dies, he still has to fall back onto Kelra. And I don't think Ryzen by himself, even with a purple buff, can 1v5. Kelra can definitely do that.
You know, I just think this march-in is obvious. This will actually crack open the base of IDNS, right? So this is the time for them to show what they're made of here in terms of having the defense. They have great clear, but can they actually stop this game from ending?
I guess we'll see Chaknu coming in, looking for the play with the Concealed Lord, already breaking down mid inhib, top inhib, falling to E2 max as well. Smart Omega want to break this right open, but the Lord is cleared out. Renzio doing a lot of damage to Angelina in the back line. E2 max gonna miss the chain, not quite enough to finish off Izzy. And Chaknu finds the two-man wall charge, monster kill. They find one, they find two. IDNS is breaking apart, and the crystal is going to fall in favor of Smart Omega.
Well, there it is. That was the moment he was waiting for, and it was actually just inevitable. It was about time. The lead was massive for Smart Omega, and they just ended the game before it even got the chance for IDNS.
Yeah, I mean, that's checkmate. When you have a 10k goal lead that early on into the game, it's really difficult to actually bounce back from it unless you just continuously play for high ground defense or somehow contest or steal the Lord. And in most cases, that just isn't going to happen. If we're looking for items, and especially if we're looking for the one who can actually try to go for the steal, and that's going to be Angelina, there's just not enough damage compared to a Retribution.
As the Xavier was just put too far behind too early into the game, Ryzen on that Fanny, being able to make use of his high damage in the early game to just completely take over and prevent the scaling cores on IDNS from ever being able to pick up steam. A very one-sided victory here. Definitely not ideal for the side of IDNS.
Smart Omega, man, this is I don't know. It's weird because I'm not used to seeing them play some of these heroes, right? But it worked out so well for them, and I'm expecting to see more. But this still solidifies the idea of Julian either needs to be a priority ban for some teams or a pick, because like you mentioned, for some teams, let's say 10k gold difference, right? You might be able to buy a little bit of time, but if you notice the way that Edimax was playing it, or even, you know, just Renzio having all those health bars, you can literally force your way into any situation of the enemy team as long as you get the CC off, the knockups, you get the attention of them, and then the damage was already there to follow up. So I feel like Julian needs to be handled or prioritized.
Well, I think in this case, this hasn't been the best showing of Julian. Only towards the mid to later stages of the game did we really see him stand out in terms of how much damage he was pumping through. However, we need to talk about that earlier stage of that game. How was Julian supposed to actually deal specifically with Xavier in lane? But with the help of Chaknu, especially on Brock, the early wave clear gives him an advantage to rotate faster. I don't know about you, but I'm guessing Omega is doing a really good job here.
Yep, and speaking of guessing, that was just a really great game to kickstart MSC overall. But you guys guys can make a guess on what the winner of this series is going to be. Make sure you guys make your guesses via the in-game esports hub before each match. Make sure you do so before the match ends, because correct guesses will reward you with MSC coins that can be used to redeem exquisite skins, as well as the exclusive MSC emote, as well as graffitis. So you guys don't want to miss it.
I'll tell you what, my guesses are already off. So, I guess I'm not going to be getting any of those emotes or graffitis or anything like that. But we still have plenty of days, plenty of matches ahead of us, and don't forget to get your guesses in, because I'll tell you what, I feel like a lot of people kind of felt that way about after yesterday.
Yeah, no, I totally agree as well. I mean, it's a little bit of a letdown, but I definitely think that most people, and especially those who are watching our EGG, are going to be enjoying their time here. Tell us a little bit more about EGG stuff, huh?
Yep, of course, we gotta shout out our official media partner, EGG Network. As you mentioned, it is Southeast Asia's 24/7 esports channel under the Astro Malaysia group. You guys can catch MSC 2022 at EGG Network channel, which is 800, right from the comfort of your own home. And of course, do check them out on their social media platforms as well. They got Facebook, they got Instagram, they got TikTok, they got YouTube, they got Twitter. Anywhere you want to find them, you're going to be able to find them. Make sure to show them some support for bringing you all this MSC action at home. But without further ado, let us have a look at the item builds.
All right, immediately we have to start talking about this interesting build coming in from E2Max, right? When you're coming in towards that mid lane up against the Xavier, you need some form of damage to help you wave clear and match up against it. Knowing that Xavier is going for really expensive items like Clock of Destinies, his wave clearing doesn't start really kicking in until he has the enchanted talisman. So when we look at the compositions afterwards, then we see the bigger picture. This Grok pick, initially you're thinking maybe he's going into the EXP lane. He sees the Thamos. Maybe this isn't the best matchup in the world. More so, we want to make sure that Ryzen specifically is able to have a good time, since the Hilda's pick from Zanri is looking to invade, looking to be as annoying as possible. So clear that mid lane, help your jungler, and then eventually match the enemy jungler.
Man, I'm still wondering. I mean, now that we're seeing the stats here too, right there, like, what was the saving grace here for IDNS? Was there a chance here at all? Did it start in the jungle for them? I mean, was that a very weak point for them?
No, this was an extremely weak point for them. And I think, wait, first of all, let me pull that statement back a little bit. I think IDNS had a really good initial idea. However, Omega took it one step further, right? They switched it up right at the very last second. Chakru on this Grok, making it almost impossible for Ruby to actually play the game. That power of nature is such a useful tool.
It really is, but we've got to award the MVP for this game, and it is going to go over to E2Max from the side of Omega. That Julian mid gameplay, the first time we have seen the hero play it in the mid lane, the first time we've seen him with this sort of build, a 5-0 and 7 KEA and a 759 GPM as a mid laner is absolutely incredible. This man is really showing us how this new hero should be played.
This is probably one of the best performances for Julian mid, right? If I remember right, and we saw that here from EnVyMax, and I mean, look at the plays being set up here in the highlights. That's what we're talking about, that aggressive kind of playstyle from Chaknu. Even if he goes down, he finds those setups, and it's usually followed by EnVyMax.
Yeah, and I mean, E2Max, he's making sure his presence is felt, right? The mid lane gets cleared up super quick, and immediately he's looking for either to jump the backline, or more importantly, just to start peeling for the rest of his team. And I think that's what Julian really brings to the table for Smart Omega, that extra bit of flexibility when somebody is looking for those engages, especially if it's Renzio or Chaknu. Somebody needs to pull back to peel, and E2Max is that guy. You can ask him to engage, you can ask him to assassinate, you can also ask him to peel.
I think we can see overall from these highlights, the flexibility from Smart Omega really played a big role in their domination in this game. They have so many different paths into the team fight, so many different heroes that can engage, and their positioning always does seem to be pretty much on point. On the opposite side though, you can definitely tell that at some point IDNS were sort of scrambling a little bit to decide how they wanted to continue playing the game. There would be times where they would try to engage aggressively, but find that, oh, we're in a bit too far, we have to back off. And they ended up being kind of chaotic because the people that should be peeling aren't really peeling, and it kind of renders the backline a bit more vulnerable. If you guys don't want to be vulnerable yourselves, maybe you guys should consider looking into the Transformer bonus event that is happening in-game right now. Make sure you guys log into the game between June 11th and June 13th, because you can complete tasks to claim Transformers passes, which can then be used to draw amazing prizes, which include brand new skins, recall effects, battle emotes, and more. So make sure you guys don't miss out on any of this.
So what you're saying is IDNS might need to transform their play style or draft a little bit for game number 2.
I wouldn't say that. I think they have really good ideas. I think it's attempting different plans of attacks, right? I think they tunnel vision very, very hard on how to actually deal with Fanny when obviously, well, I wouldn't even say obviously. That's a terrible way of stating it. Omega having a really good adaptive plan in the draft right at the very last second here, and having that flexibility made it hard for IDNS to actually continue on with this particular plan to punish the Fanny. I think they should have actually adapted and started looking to punish people like Renzio, for example, up on the top side. Sun was doing a good job keeping him in check, but diving him maybe a little bit hard, but I think that was their only out.
Again, I think a lot of it comes down to the discussion we had in the draft. Early power spike. I said it, you know, the potential was there. And worst case scenario for the case of IDNS was to give that first blood, that first kill, to the Fanny, right? You don't want to give that kill to Ryzen early on, because not only that does he have kind of like free reign at that point, but then again paired with the way that the Chak Mamba plays, it just pairs so well together. I mean, this is why a team like Smart Omega, they know how to come back from deficits very, very well, but if you give them a lead early on, they have played against some of the best teams that work really well with leads, that they have adapted those kind of decision-making, those play styles. I mean, that's innate for them. So this is something that IDNS wants to be careful for game 2. You know, if that means being a little bit safer early on to get to that point where you can start to hit your power spikes depending on the draft, right? That could be a good starting step for IDNS.
Well, hopefully it will be the step that they decide to take, because as you mentioned, I do think a little bit of transformation is going to need to happen here in order for them to adapt to what Smart Omega is playing. After all, as you mentioned, there is no need to come back from a deficit if the deficit doesn't exist in the first place. So I'm very interested to find out whether or not IDNS will be able to make the changes necessary. As you already pointed out in that early game, they were definitely a little bit too aggressive invading the jungle. Ruby is strong, yes, but not when you are 1v2 at level 1. Let's find out how game 2 will go in the drafting phase.
I don't know how I missed this earlier, but I didn't even know Jack New transformed his hair there. You know, it looks great, man. And okay, going to the drafting phase, IDNS, this time swapping sides here. They're going to take out the 1-1. Smart Omega responding with that Valentina ban.
Yeah, I think Omega getting rid of Valentina is definitely understandable. IDNS straight off the gate getting rid of Wanwan. You want to get the free win heroes out of the way and start focusing on how to actually prioritize here. Now, a lot of discussion has been said, is blue side or red side better in this particular meta? And I definitely think it depends on the hero pool of how many of these meta picks can you actually play efficiently, because some are very situational. Take for example, Rock. Some players are a hit, some players are a miss.
I can definitely agree with you there, and I do like the fact that now when you ask the question which side is better, you can actually answer it depends, because there have been metas in the past where it was very obvious that one side was better than the other, which just goes to show I think the balance in this game has gone a long way, and we're already seeing that with the sheer number of unique hero picks that we saw in day number 1, 40 heroes by itself.
I think that's great. I think that diversity, right, coming into these hero picks, I mean, the metas obviously are established in their own regions, but that's what we talked about yesterday as kind of the established meta for this tournament, MSC 2022, right? And that's kind of like we actually haven't even entirely figured that out yet, because with that many unique hero picks, like, who do you prioritize? Who do you ban out, right? And usually on the side of the red side of the draft, from what we've seen, it's always kind of standard to ban the Valentina. So then you're pretty much minus one ban for you. So it leaves a lot open here. The draft is now, the first phase is done, right? They take out Akai again. The Julian is actually out of the picture this time. They don't want to give that up because they've seen what it can do. So now what does IDNS prioritize here?
Well, as a first pick, this might be a little difficult. There's a lot of different directions that you can go, but you don't want to give a direction where it's an obvious tell what type of situation or what type of composition you want to build. So I think IDNS going with the Xavier, very, very safe. He fits in many different compositions. Doesn't really give too much, but it does establish some presence in the mid lane.
I think we have to note as well, Fanny has actually been led through the draft again, and Smart Omega actually have the opportunity to pick it up if they really want to. Franco Akai banned again, so there really isn't too much they have to worry about. If they do pick that up, it will force IDNS in a situation where they might have to prioritize the Atlas early on, and this was already discussed earlier in day number 1. Early picking the Atlas is not good.
Yeah, if we see Fanny pop up here, then I feel like they're also could consider, IDNS could also consider Kufra, right? But it's going to be, for now, the Beatrix comes out. What is going to the last pick going to be? There you go. It's actually going to be Lilia.
Okay, that's a pretty decent matchup, especially since they can play for the earlier stages. But I think Smart Omega want to see what more does IDNS give us a bigger tell about your composition. So we're going to take our own way. We're going to make sure that you have a decently bad matchup in the mid lane. Lilia naturally able to push as well as really harass Xavier in the mid lane while still having a super safe gold laner in Beatrix. Very meta, very, very good at what she does in pretty much any single role. So now it's up to IDNS to kind of show more identity in the composition to threaten Omega.
You can imagine that they themselves must be feeling a bit threatened right now, though. Kelra on this Beatrix is always something that you have to be careful of. The sniper on the side of Omega going to be able to pick people off pretty consistently. So instantly, 2 assassins. As we just mentioned it before as well, Kelra in MPL Philippines Season 9 has a 71% win rate on Beatrix.
I'll have you know that's about the same percentage win rate I have on my gourd in ranked games. It's pretty darn good. Yeah, I know. And, yes, and that's high mythic, okay? But anyway, let me tell you, the Beatrix is just it's such a stable pick, like you mentioned, Gideon, and it's played so much, especially in the Philippines, right? I mean, there's a lot of great Beatrix players, but I gotta say, Kelra, one of the best. It's similar to the fact that he can either be very aggressive in his choices, or he can actually farm up and just get to the point where then he's confident enough to make those plays. And so they actually complement this too with a Ling pick here for Ryzen, right? I actually like this because we get to see these assassin jungles come out again, and it makes things not so much stale, as you said yesterday, Gideon.
Yeah, they're not trying to be open AI. That's what I'm trying to say. They are not trying to be grandmaster chess players. They're trying to show you this is Mobile Legends. There's better ways to play it than having to play a very straightforward standard style of open books. Now, if you look at IDNS, right? They're looking at the composition so far, saying, hey, they've got an assassin. That might be a little bit of a problem. Natalia is one of their big picks that Omega must be extremely aware of. Being able to get picked off like that, and especially the smokescreen being a natural counter to the black shoes. If you can't use the black shoes, or if you're silenced, you basically have no escape mechanic.
Yeah, for that reason, I think we're gonna have to pay a lot of attention to what Chaknu is going to be playing later on. We can see IDNS already banning out the Kufra in preparation that they might pick it up to counteract the Fanny. But also, a very interesting ban from Smart Omega, the Irritel, has not been seen on stage thus far.
That's kind of been a question too. Like, how is the new Irithel, right?
I think Irithel's in a very similar position to Mia, right? And I think, you know, a lot of the philosophy of Mia, you get 4 items, you basically win the game, one of the hardest scalers in the game. And I think Irithel is starting to get to that point. But the meta now being that there's so much gold on the map to obtain, especially from gold laners, getting that gold shield, and then rotating topside to get the second tower of the game. I think it's a lot easier to actually achieve that.
Yeah.
Actually, I might have to disagree a little bit with you there on the Irritel. I actually think she fulfills a slightly different niche to Mia, yes? Both of them, when they get their items, are really strong. dominating the gold lane. He can go up against most gold laners now. I think even against Beatrix, he actually puts up a pretty good fight due to the changes to her new energy style of gameplay, which is why I think Omega, they are a little worried about that. But straight away, Angela Link combo, here we go again.
I kind of expected this. I was like, well, what could Chakney pick here, right? The Cooper's out, the Alice is out. He does play the Angela, and paired with the Angeline combo here, it could work out well for them.
What? So they're gonna go Dyroth? So they're gonna go Dyroth gold lane? No, Dyroth EXP, right? And then after that, throw the Esmeralda down in towards the gold lane, I suppose? I'm not entirely sure here, but somebody's gonna get babysit by this Natalia one way or another, and Omega make a really good response by throwing in the Thalmos. Doesn't matter what matchup you're gonna throw at me, I will be able to sustain.
What would you rather give the gold lane to? An Esmeralda or a Dyroth?
Personally, I feel I want to give a little bit more kill pressure, so I think Dyroth, and then after that, make sure that Natalia is going to babysit that lane.
Interesting. I actually would prefer putting Esmeralda in the gold lane myself.
So I'm the tiebreaker.
Yeah, because Esmeralda wants to scale up, wants to get items. Dyroth does better against tankier heroes that are going to fight him one-to-one. Against a marksman, he does get juked out fairly easily, but I guess we will see. This is something that IDNS, we know they do. They do actually like going for the double fight. Their side lane, more of a 1-3-1 composition to just go hard and fast in the early game. Will it be enough to overcome the obstacle that is Smart Omega? We will now find out as we return to the land of Dawn.
Interesting points you guys made here, and I wonder what the chat thinks too out there, because what scales better, right? It looks like it's going to go ahead and be the Esmeralda up into the gold lane, and I was going to actually say Esmeralda as well, because let's say you're able to get those items a little bit faster, especially something like the Ice Queen wand, where you can kind of provide that slowdown for your team. That might work better for them here. And again, you're still also relying on Dyroth to, get those levels, get the abilities, but then kind of be that, I guess, damage for mid-game here, and also the penetration that you have.
And you guys are really safe. I'm a savage here. That's the problem. I like the risk involved. I like being able to stand above the opponent. But fortunately, when you're in pro play, there's just a lot going on here. And more importantly, so is when you're looking at Zanri on this Natalia, I would have expected him to be matching where Chaknu is moving all across the map, but instead, make a play down bottom for that first blood.
That's an excellent first blood going over to the side of IDNS, and that's exactly why you drafted Natalia. Zanri being able to pick that up with the execute in a lane where usually you would expect the Tamas to just be able to hold his own for a very long time. That's going to be a great start for Sun as well. As we mentioned, if Dyroth is able to scale up, he can really come online in the mid game.
They're going in for this one. Actually, Chaknir should be fine. Takes quite a bit of damage though, but yeah, going back to your points there too, I just want to say, and they're going in the bottom lane again.
They're just not letting you talk right now. Ryzen wants Sun, he's looking for it, and the Dyroth not going to be able to escape.
Good revenge kill here, but even in mid lane, we are seeing that the River E2 Max is in a lot of trouble. Manages to walk out just in time as Ryzen is rotating upwards, but this does mean that Zanri could get a potential pick.
E2 Max, unfortunately, staying just a little bit too long, and 2 kills gonna go the way of Natalia. They need this for the turtle.
I felt like I could hear his thoughts. Like, okay, maybe I shouldn't go back in this bush because there is a Natalia out there, right? So, and that's exactly what happened again. If we saw there's some, again, early action. Oh, gets the heart guard to stay alive. Turtle not going to be secured. As I was saying, right, Zanri is at a good starting point already, and this could be similar to what happened for Naomi yesterday too on the start.
Oh, but Ryzen going to be targeted Chaknu now, and Red Team taking massive damage. The Abysm Strike finds them both. Double kill for the Fanny. Templates of Blades having to be forced out by Ryzen, as he now going to be chasing down Sun. He wants to look for it, getting dropped real low. Dawning Light not going to land. He now has his eyes set on Zanri. Will he be able to get him the smoke screen? Gonna prevent him from moving forward. E2 Max is a bit too far up. He has the black shoes, but now he is completely out of position.
Oh, that's got to be frustrating because it was just one hit and he couldn't get it, even with the black shoes, and then he was a little bit too overextended at that point.
Yeah, this seems to be a game of last hits. I mean, it all started with Renzio, and now even IDNS walk away with the exact same situation. No hard guard, but it still works out. Kelra?
I see, taking massive damage, the Wesker working out, even trying to swap the Nibiru to finish the job, but luckily Pops the Sprint is able to get out of there.
What a big brain play that was. What a big brain. Who would have, I don't know. Personally for me, if you're in Kelra's position, who in the right mind thinks I'm gonna hide in Shrine Rush and pull this off? Even though knowing that Zanri is coming back out of base.
I mean, maybe he likes to live dangerously, right? This guy is, he likes to play that way, and sometimes it pays off. Actually, more times than not, it pays off. 71.43%, it pays off.
Look, he's been gone for a while, and he wants to make that TikTok highlight. He's gonna do it.
I think we've definitely been seeing Beatrix players be a lot more daredevil-ish recently, since they have seemed to reach a consensus that Wesker is one of the only guns left that really hasn't been nerfed that hard, so can really output a lot of damage to unsuspecting people. And yes, even though it should be dangerous to hide in that bush, the rewards sometimes do outweigh the risks.
So what I'm wondering too is we saw the damage coming out from Sun, right? With that Abysm Strike that he had. And again, he's been in the XP lane, so I guess he's not needed that. He doesn't have to be in the gold lane. They find another kill at the bottom of the lane. Ryzen now 2 versus 1 has the hard guard. Temp's blade's gonna come out. Can they find the kill here? He's looking hard. No, man, the mega kill go over to Lois. Chakview goes down as well. They find 2, 3. Make it 3.
Goodness, that is a big play coming in from IDNS. I think, IDNS are reading the playbook, right? Because even for me, I was stating earlier into the game, yeah, they're probably gonna make sure that Jackdo is sitting on the top side, babysitting Kelra to make sure they can dominate that lane. And I would expect Natalia to actually do the same and match it, but no, IDNS, they thought one step ahead. Let's play on the opposite side. Let's play with the most kill pressure and ensue and get that snowball started.
Yeah, and I think it's working out for them so really well so far. That's got to be devastating there for Omega, nearly getting 2 kills, but Lois coming in at the perfect time to just pick off Ryzen, and even Chakview unluckily not able to finish off the job. But because they're focusing on the EXP lane, Kelra is getting a lot of free farm, so I think that's something they have to pay attention to.
Well, not only that, let's not forget that they haven't been able to convert these kills into bigger objectives. So far, it's 1-to-1 at Turtles, and no structures have been taken.
Yeah, that's huge, actually. Now that you think, now that you mention it, there's no, I mean, it's great to have kills. It's great to have the gold lead, but, I mean, if you're not getting space on the map, especially leading into those objectives, it's just going to catch up to you. So they need to start focusing on actually getting some turrets down here. Also, Kelra picking up that Blade of Despair with that weapon mastery, he's going to do a lot more damage. We already saw the early damage potential, even without that.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can see now that they're still trying to play really the Dawning Light just barely missing Omega. They're definitely adjusting to this aggression from IDNS. They recognize, okay, we have thrown a few too many kills over to their side. Now we have to play a little more defensively. But just as they say that, Kelra, will hard guard be enough? No, it will not.
That's some good layering of CC coming in from IDNS. They made sure that they were timing the smoke screen. As soon as that silence wears off, the falling star move comes in to get that mini stun and then completely blowing him up afterwards. So Kelra with the flicker just was not enough to survive such an onslaught. So now, with the snowball that Zanri is able to accumulate for himself, they're starting to threaten the stronger sides of the map.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about, right? When we saw this with Naomi, and at this point, I think even Naomi was a similar KDA, and it just shows how strong this Natalia pick can be, especially with, the high and dry. You find a lane, you find a kill. Oh, you gotta be careful there, son. But yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. And it starts to snowball the rest of your team. And they finally get a turret here. That's the first one, right? 7 minutes into the game. So this is their time to actually find these advantages that they've already built for themselves.
Yep, they do get the turtle as well as Ryzen now jumping on Angelina. He sees Sun is real low. Hardguard already on the link, but the flicker right into the tower will keep these 3 players of IDNS safe for now. Ryzen, he's thinking about it, but better not.
Huh. Interesting move made by Omega. The macro play was that they were going for a lane swap. They understood, hey, Renzio, he's having a hard time. He's 0-3, he needs a win somehow, and Izzy doesn't have that much kill pressure. So they try to go for a lane swap, but in that process, IDNS were able to actually obtain and didn't set up the waves good enough from the side of Omega to protect that bottom tier 1. This ends up in result that IDNS picks up a tower for free and now will conceive this bottom side from Omega. They're going to start pressing their advantages, and with the Lord spawning at about 65 seconds, things are just falling into place.
Will it be enough? As we've mentioned before, Smart Omega are a team that can definitely come back from deficits like this, and 2K, 8 minutes in, really isn't that big of an issue, especially when you consider that Ryzen is going to be scaling up very hard alongside Kelra towards that late game, so definitely can't count out either side right now, but IDNS looking to be in much more comfortable form as compared to game 1.
Yeah, definitely. You know, Smart Omega's been in situations like this many times. That's what they're known for, right? The comeback kings. And at this point, I think they really need to be able to just take it easy a little bit, right? Get to those timers for themselves, because now, I mean, they're not so far behind like the previous game where in terms of IDNS being 10k gold behind, right? So it's still a salvageable game for Smart Omega, but I gotta say, IDNS is just controlling the pace so well, and a lot of that also has to do with Lois, again, performing very, very well on this Vanny, finding those picks, getting the mobility, but the pressure from Zanri on the Satalia is paying dividends, and now with this Lord coming up, I still think that if they decide to focus on the Lord and clash it out, it could still possibly go anyway, unless Zanri finds someone out in the open and makes it an automatic numbers advantage.
No, I absolutely agree with you, Naisu. I think Omega are definitely in a position where they can actually fight back. I mean, recent item power spike coming in from IDNS at the 28k mark, we still haven't seen those purchases, which means the gold distribution is kind of relatively even here, and nobody's getting too far ahead.
But the Abyssal Strike nearly is taking out Ryzen, if not for the hard card. Now Sun in trouble, Renzio holding a lot of damage. They will be able to pick up the Deer off, as Lois not in position to be able to finish that off. But we can see in the bottom side as well, Kelra getting chased back to base after being hunted down by Izzy, who is now slightly out of position, but this is an Esmeralda, should have no problem walking away.
That's a nice start, right? And Zanri picking up the Malefic Roar is also a nice item pickup, because again, that's a huge factor, right? At what point do you have to stop worrying about Natalia in a game? I don't think there's any point in the game, because you always have to be conscious of, let's protect Kelra, but at the same time, we got to make sure that Ryzen can also make those plays on this mobile assassin that is Ling. So I feel like Renzio needs to buy a little bit more time for himself to get kind of caught up here, because he is going to be kind of that front line. And now, look at the mid.
Ryzen gonna be targeted, instantly bursts down a Abyssal Strike on 2 people, forces the black shoes out. They find 2, Kelra finds 1 in return, but he's dropping real low. Renzio is able to zone out Izzy though, so the Beatrix is safe for now. 2 for 2 trade.
Okay, I'm starting to get the idea here. It looks like Omega have kind of conceived this earlier stages of the game. They understand, yes, we are behind, but they're at no point of this game will they be able to outscale IDNS esports, right? They're waiting for IDNS to make a mistake. And I think IDNS, yes, they want to press the tempo, but they also see the amount of potential that Omega could bounce back in case of a macro mistake. If they end up getting, I don't know, a full Savage given over to Omega, I think Omega will take that lead and run away with it. Looking at the item list so far, I mean, everybody's in some really good spirits here. 3 items coming in from Dyroth. We're seeing that Fanny's in a very comfortable position. High burst, 3 items already built. But more importantly, Izzy needs to speed up. If he gets this Ice Queen's wand, it could really put a full stop to Omega's plans.
Meantime, though, Falling Star Moon on E2 Max forces out the Black Shoes. Zanri, the damage from Kelra. Angelina now being targeted in the backline, and E2 Max is the target of Lois. Instead, Ryzen finds his target. Lois, unfortunately, not able to do the same, so Omega bites back.
This is what I was saying, right? You just find those little moments where where IDNS makes the mistake here. We saw the damage potential coming out from Kelra, and then it was followed up from Ryzen to get the picks off, and now with Lord being the focus here.
Yep, now they see IZ is in place. They want to zone him out. They want this Lord Renzio as well as Ryzen right on top of him will be able to zone him out. Sun now in the bush looking for it, but is scouted out by Renzio. IZ in position. I think Omega, they're probably not going to force this right now. They're still not in the best position, but they are keeping the Lord in check. Will they be able to take this away? Falling Sunmoon once again on the Kelra and the backline. Dotting life, not quite enough damage. Hard guard onto Ryzen. Will it be enough? As Template plays will avoid Lois. Business Strike missing completely. Sun gonna drop over to the side of Omega. The rest of IDNS forced to retreat, leaving IZ alone in the lurch. Ryzen chasing him down. Puppet on the string. He meets his target, but the Falling Sunmoon actually stuns to Zenry. Finding Kelra in the backline. That is pretty good for them as Lois getting a stop pull on the link as well. Zenry finally falls, but he's done his job.
Talk about chaos there, right? I mean, just one after another. And yeah, Smart Omega loses their jungler, so they can't actually, you know, go for the Lord. Lois is still up, but I don't know if they actually find another kill here.
Oh, they're gonna find E2 Max. He doesn't have the black shoes. Killing spree going over to IZ.
Huge pick coming in from IDNS, really huge. Now the numbers advantage are in their favor. They can actually find their end game mechanic in their Lord, and this is great. Now Omega, unfortunately, what they wanted to do was take this Lord and threaten IDNS to make some presence, but the delay, IDNS just played it smart, looked for the delay, slowed them down, and now with IZ, with an Ice Queen's wand, this is going to be really difficult if he gets on top of Kelra.
Big pickup, as you said, the Ice Queen's wand, man. I mean, that alone will be an obstacle in itself for Smart Omega. We're checking out this instant replay here. As you mentioned, you know, they were trying to just kind of bait IDNS from making a mistake here, but unfortunately, it kind of backfired a little bit on them, especially with Zenry. As you saw, he found Kelra. He did his job. At this point in the game, that's exactly what Zenry needs to do, and that's exactly what Smart Omega needs to be aware of. Where is Zenry coming from? Is Kelra okay? Because as soon as we commit the Heart Guard over to Ryzen, that's going to be tough.
I mean, the big problem is that Omega right now, their main carry is going to be Kelra for the time being.
In the meantime, though, Heart Guard already being used on Renzio, which means that Ryzen doesn't have it, but is still able to find Angelina. Sun gonna drop to the Camus as well. Even a double kill onto the Natalia. He's still alive right now, dueling up there in the top lane. Now going to be able to get away from Lloyd. Chakru, unfortunately, no longer in the Heart Guard. Might be in trouble, but Sprint gets him out of there. IZ gonna have to get away. He has Sprint as well, so puppet on a string, not going to land.
Man, I mean, that was crazy because we didn't see on the camera, but that was a double kill there for Renzio, so that was a big play. Kelra's got to be careful here, though, too. He does have the damage, as you just saw, able to actually be quite threatening here, and now they're going to be focused on the mid lane.
Yeah, they need to crack this open as soon as possible. They need a bigger map to play with, and more importantly, with 78 seconds on the clock until this Luminous Lord is back up and running, Omega will have to play it slow and take their time, waiting for IDNS to make that mistake. Now, if we look at the damage charts here, Ryzen is in a good position where he's dealing a lot of damage. Kelra unable to keep up, mainly because Zenry has been keeping him in check. But on top of that, the rest of the IDNS members evenly distributed, taking second, third, fourth, and fifth place in terms of highest damage in this game so far. Omega are extremely careful with how they move around the map now.
In terms of the player gold as well, despite not doing a lot of damage overall, Lois is actually the richest player on the field. Ryzen not too far behind. So in terms of net worth, both teams are quite even. Only a 1k lead for the side of IDNS, which means that right now the game can still go either way. It's just that IDNS have a slight structure advantage.
Yeah, right now, exactly that, right? They can continue to push that bottom lane in, so Smart Omega always kind of has to babysit that, make sure that you have someone to handle those waves pushing in, and now that this Lord is coming up in just about 14 seconds, it's going to be a tough one, because you have to be super careful on your approach, the decision-making, and just not lose one to Zenry, because that will be your best option here. So Zenry's job, literally find Kelra. That's the best target you can find here, or force Ed2 Max even to use the black shoes so he doesn't have that reset available to him.
But who's going to be looking for him, right? Renzio has to deal with the front line. E2 Max, he's at threat against Zanri as well. If he shows up, then maybe we can see the IDNS starts pulling back, but it's all about who can find that first pick. And even for Chaknu, that hard guard is just way too valuable to put himself at risk. So they have to clump up together, as you can see in the mid lane, as for making sure that they can cover each other's backs, because they cannot afford to walk away from this bubble.
I think what's important for Smart Omega right now is not just the positioning of their players, but a lot of pressure on Chaknu to decide who he's going to be using the hard guard on, because that is a very valuable ultimate. And right now, he has to choose between keeping it for Kelra, using it on Ryzen, or potentially saving Renzio in many of these fights, because Tamas is having a little bit of difficulty. Two members of IDNS have dominant eyes, even Zanri picking up the C Halberd on top of that to negate all of Omega's regen.
I feel like, you know, now that we see these items here, Renzio has pretty darn good itemization, right? And we saw earlier, a couple minutes ago, that double kill that he got with the hard guard. So he's actually quite tanky now. And he can start kind of being that front line for Omega, whereas Chaknu can, yeah, make the decision who's the best target here. Because Renzio was struggling in the beginning of the game, and now he's fine. So he's actually going to go ahead and just try to see if he can force something from IDNS.
Yeah, Renzio is pretty self-sustaining as well. With the changes to Thalmos, he's able to sustain quite a bit with his new man. He gets a lot of HP out of that, and with Vengeance, that's going to buy him a double amount of time.
In the bottom lane, an attempt being made on the bottom inhibitor is putting Zanri out of position. That's going to be a free kill. Ryzen takes a lot of damage from the Dawning Light, but they find one of their primary problems, the Natalia taken off the board. I'm pretty sure they now have their eyes on the Luminous Lord.
I think they should press their advantages here. Like E2 Max, he doesn't mind taking a little bit more. Now that Zanri is done, he can take damage and then still use the Black Shoe safely. So they're going to move up, take control of it, and then start to look for the Lord. IDNS, either they delay for the next 20, maybe 25 seconds to allow Zanri to travel over, or they just duke it out 4v5.
We're gonna find out. Renzio and Chaknu already working on it. Angelina gonna be found out by E2 Max's eyes. He tries to zone them out, but it's not going to be enough. Ryzen now coming in. The enemy jungler going in. He gets the steal on the Lord. Shuts down on the Esmeralda, but does it matter? He got what he was looking for.
That was a great steal there. I mean, that buys time, but I was going to say too, you know, Smart Omega has to be super careful because you don't want to be caught in that position there around that Lord pit, and now they have to defend here. So they should be fine to defend. It was a great try because also Kelra was forcing Angelina back. But if Angelina goes back on the Xavier, you still have that Dawning Light potential to steal, and they didn't even need that.
Yeah, they threw everything. Honestly, well done to IDNS. This is some great coordination. They threw their bodies, Izzy specifically, threw his body in, using the sprint to run in. Angelina goes in times the Dawning Light with Izzy running in at the same time. And Loy goes flying with a Retribution to try and secure.
Ooh, speaking of flying, Loy setting up a lot of like the middle, breaking the miss completely, and Sun is now at the mercy of Omega. Gets picked off by Kelra, who now has the hard card on him. They've already managed to clear up the Lord. They're looking for more now, but a nice Mystic Field gonna stop the chase. Ooh, Angelina doing loads of damage now.
That was, I mean, either way, right? Decisions were made there, and Smart Omega able to find a kill, but also the decision for Lois to just be like, you know what, I'm going to check out of here, I'm going to go push the top lane up, and then I'm going to go back to base, because they have to keep the pressure here on Smart Omega on all fronts, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even though Kelra was at kill, was supposed to die there, he still is really quick on the button with his Winds of Nature, but Rise now going for Izzy.
Yep, they're going to be jumping on top of the Esmeralda, but he is so tanky. Lois providing some backup, but it's not enough, and now Ryzen, all of his shield is gone, but the double shotgun from Kelra, nearly taking out the Fanny. Now E2 Max in trouble, and Zanri finds the kill. He sacrifices his life, but again, a 1-for-1 trade is exactly what he's looking for.
Is that worth it for Zanri to continue to do that, right? Like, to sacrifice himself in a way to just find a target here. This time around, it was E2 Max. Do you think that's worth it, Gideon?
Personally, I think it's really worth it. At this stage of the game, Natalia, yes, she's extremely valuable to take on someone like Kelra, right? But now Omega have started to scale. The gold leads 62k to 63k. They basically all have max items at this stage in the game, right? So every death with the long death timer, a 4v5 is actually ideal for IDNS, who have itemized to make sure that they start peeling backwards. They're really, really tanky with Izzy as well. So they can pick and choose when to go in and out of fights, where Omega, if they go in, they have to go in hard.
They really do, and it is kind of curious that they decided to go on to Eyes. Yes, he is the only one that they saw at that point, but there's no point using the hot card against an Esmeralda because it just doesn't matter to him in the first place. Both players now going to respawn. The Luminous Lord going to be entering the field yet again. This is the final evolution, and both these teams are going to be looking for a very juicy objective right now. Omega, the ones on top of the scene. They're going to fight. Dammy loses his life, but again, he's done his job. Izzy buying a lot of time. Hard guard on Ryzen. They want to look for the Lord, and Izzy is buying so much time. A business strike going to take out each move, Max. And now Ryzen isn't on the Lord. Boys is the one in control. Shut down, double kill, triple kill going over the silence because the unstoppable streak's gonna be shut down. Maniac going over the IDNS Esports.
What a save! What a save coming in from Angelina, denying two from the Lord Pit to allow Lois to do God's work. Well done, IDNS.
Before that all happened, I was going to say Smart Omega does not want to fight in that pit because of the Savior and Aloys, and there you go. They do it. They take it 1-1. IDNS taking down Smart Omega.
The comeback kings from the Philippines have been denied their victory as IDNS proves that no team at MSC 2022 can be underestimated. We are starting off day 2, ladies and gentlemen, with a 1-1 matchup, and I am very excited to see how the day is going to continue.
Whew, what a game that was. Sun did a great job. Kelra, unfortunately, getting picked off there made it so bad for Smart Omega. And on top of being in a bad position inside of that Lord Pit, you hate to see it. A huge win for IDNS.
Yeah, you can see, the back room there, the coaches and everything else. They deserve to be happy. That was a great performance from IDNS, and again, it was a collective effort, right? Because there was some struggle there, here and there. Smart Omega showed signs of, that traditional comeback king kind of style. They're buying time, Omega timers like we call in the Philippines. But man, Xanry wasn't having it. He found the target each time, and that time, that last fight, it was actually just finding Kelra, because if you get Kelra out of the picture, any Beatrix player in general, they lose so much damage potential, and he found that target so well. So big props to Xanry on that one.
Yeah, and honestly, we didn't even talk about how much of a win this is in terms of the bigger picture of Group C. The fact is,
This is nice stuff, and I also gotta say, I have cast it before in previous tournaments for Impunity, and they look